ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਐਲਬਰਟਾ ਦੇ ਆਰੀਆ ਬੈਂਕੁਏਟ ਹਾਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਸਮਾਗਮ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਗਿਆ। ਇਸ ਸਮਾਗਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਲੀਡਰਸ਼ਿਪ ਕੈਂਡੀਡੇਟ ਪੀਟਰ ਮਕੇ ਨੇ ਵਿਸ਼ੇਸ਼ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਸ਼ਿਰਕਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਤੇ ਇਸ ਮੌਕੇ ਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਕਈ ਸਿਆਸੀ ਹਸਤੀਆਂ ਮੌਜੂਦ ਰਹੀਆਂ। ਇਹ ਵਿਸ਼ੇਸ਼ ਸਮਾਗਮ ਨੂੰ ਸਾਬਕਾ ਐਮਐਲਏ ਸੋਹੇਲ ਕਵਾਦਰੀ ਦੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਹੋਸਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ। ਐਮਐਲਏ ਸੋਹੇਲ ਕਵਾਦਰੀ 2012 ਤੋਂ 2015 ਤੱਕ ਐਡਮਿੰਟਨ ਮਿਲਵੁੱਡਸ ਦੇ ਐਮਐਲਏ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਸਾਬਕਾ ਐਮਐਲਏ ਤੇ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਨਰੇਸ਼ ਭਾਰਦਵਾਜ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸੰਬੋਧਿਤ ਕੀਤਾ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕੀਤਾ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਲੀਡਰਸ਼ਿਪ ਕੈਂਡੀਡੇਟ ਪੀਟਰ ਮਕੇ ਦਾ।
A deputy leader all throughout till 2015, and throughout that time, ladies and gentlemen, he had some tremendous portfolios where he has outperformed and went way beyond the call of his duty, which he will explain himself. And of course, that includes when he was the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Atlantic Canada and Opportunities Agency, and Peter also is the second longest serving Minister of National Defense. And he's got some phenomenal stories during his time as a Minister of National Defense. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite the Honourable Peter Mackay, the next Prime Minister of Canada. Peter.
Thank you, Naresh, for the very, very kind words of introduction. And thank you all for coming out. Thank you for being here on a balmy day in Edmonton. The weather here has been spectacular since I got here. I was telling somebody I spent Christmas here 2 years ago and it was minus 42 and you couldn't go outside. I know we have a few Oilers fans here in the crowd. I have to be careful because I started my day in Calgary yesterday. I don't want to make a mistake. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm truly grateful for your presence. We've had a very busy couple of days in Alberta, Manitoba before that, off to Saskatchewan tomorrow. It's a reminder of the large and challenging and diverse country that we have. When we have opportunities to discuss these issues in person and hear the perspectives of engaged and concerned Canadians everywhere, we realize that the challenge can be addressed if the government wants to address it. If the government is motivated to make the necessary changes, it can be addressed. And I know that having, as Naresh mentioned, having been in government, I know that the solutions do exist if the motive to make the necessary change is real. I want to acknowledge some of my friends and colleagues who are here. I know that many of you know Laurie Hahn. Laurie has been a long-serving member of the Conservative Party, but also a public servant in every sense of the word. He served the country in uniform for many years as a member of the Royal Canadian Air Force. He served as a member of Parliament. He has served and continues to serve on the police board here in Edmonton. And he has served his country with a type of class and dignity that sets a very high bar for anyone who loves their country the way he does. So thank you very much, Laurie. Michael Cooper is here as well. Michael, please stand up. Michael is already, in a very short time, making his mark on the Parliament of Canada, and his public service is again to be admired and pointed out. And Michael, thank you very much. We've had some time to discuss some of the important issues here locally, and I look forward to working with you in the Parliament of Canada and throughout the country. Tim Upple's dad is here as well, and I had a great chat with Tim earlier today. And so, Mr. Upple, wonderful to have you with us. And all of you, it's a reminder of the affinity that I feel and the comfort that I feel within the Conservative Party of Canada. And without going too far back in history, only 1867, let's remind ourselves it was the Conservative Party that brought the country together in the very beginning. It was the Conservative Party that brought what I would describe as the biggest infrastructure project that the country's ever seen. The Great Canadian Railroad. Although I dare say that under the current administration, the Great Canadian Railroad would never be built. They would never get the environmental and regulatory approvals that would be necessary to lay track across this country. The same way we are seeing a complete absence of ability to build in this country under the current government. We saw another project come to a crashing, screeching halt today. The Saguenay LNG project in Quebec. This time it happened outside Alberta, but it still happened to Alberta, because that pipeline would have brought highly regulated, highly ethical, competitively priced oil and gas products across the country and to a new market. And that's frankly what so much of this comes down to, is the ability to move things, to move products, to add value, to add jobs, to make the economy work. I'll come back to the rail line. There's one rule of law in Canada that needs to apply to every citizen. One rule of law that says you can't willfully interfere with someone else's life in a detrimental way. We saw the complete paralysis of our transportation infrastructure. The inability to move critical goods and services across this country. Propane, medicine, food, other commodities to other markets. And it's unacceptable that the government of Canada allowed this to fester and continue for so long. It continues still. There's protracted talks going on in British Columbia, but no outcome, because the barricades are still up. And we don't know what commitments have been made because they're not being publicly disclosed. And so the problems continue. In my view, my estimation, the primary objective of any government, any level of government, of any political stripe, is to find solutions, to implement them, to initiate action that makes Canadians' lives better. That's at the crux of what people expect. Oh, and something else, basic competence, basic ability to deliver on commitments, not to deliver drama or rhetoric, but have dramatic results that come from government. That's leadership. It is a question of leadership.
Shame
it's
on
not
Trudeau.
leadership to be absent from the country when the crisis emerges, or to wait 2 weeks before declaring the barricades must come down. I think it occurred to most Canadians day one when the blockades went up that they had to come down. And then burning railway ties and burning material on an active line is a criminal offense. And so a signal to the police, and this isn't a criticism of the police, but a clear signal that the rule of law has to be respected and enforced, I think would have gone a long way. So what we are seeing, unfortunately for all Canadians, is a move away from the productivity, from the results-based economy that we have always benefited from. And it's not, I'm sad to report, it's not unique to any one region, although it's clear to all that what Alberta has done for the people of Canada deserves thanks, appreciation, and respect. So let me say, as an Eastern Canadian, perhaps the far east of Canada, Atlantic Canada, thank you, Alberta. Thank you for our schools, our roads, so much of what we have enjoyed from decades past, right up until quite recently, was because of the hard work and sacrifice of Albertans. I'm also quick to add that a lot of Atlantic Canadians came out here to work. They worked in places like Fort McMurray. They worked in the oil patch. They worked in the ag sector. They brought their skills and commitment and their work ethic here. And I remember having discussions with people like Corey Hahn and Premier Jason Kenney about how we make the country work better, how we bring down interprovincial trade barriers, how we make it easier for trades to move freely across the country. You know, we celebrate free trade with so much of the world now. The Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement with the European Union. New trade agreements that were signed in record numbers under Prime Minister Stephen Harper. But we still don't truly have free trade within our provinces in Canada. When you can't bring a box of beer from New Brunswick into Quebec, you have serious problems. Not just because we like beer, but it's indicative of some of the real dysfunction that exists in our economy. Just addressing that issue alone would unlock somewhere between $5 and $7 billion. And not to continue along that line and be the bearer of bad news, but the reality is we've lost over $150 billion with either the cancellation or the withdrawal of numerous energy projects and natural resource projects just in the last 2 years alone. And there's untold calculation as to what the loss of potential foreign investment in Canada has been, because we don't know. But we're sending a signal to the world now that Canada is uninvestable, that we're dysfunctional, that we can't build, we can't move, we can't create the type of wealth and prosperity and opportunity that's really associated with our country. We're a country that's been admired by others. We're a destination for people who want to come and have the freedom to work, do more for themselves and provide for themselves. But we're somehow off track on what has been a very prosperous trajectory for many, many years. I've had the perspective now, having been away from politics, quite frankly, for the last 5 years, and back working in the private sector. But I've kept a close eye on what's been happening in the country. I have young children, and my reasons for leaving was very much associated with my family and their future. And I feel now that my reasons for returning are similarly motivated. Their future, my children's future, but everybody's children's future. I feel that we have a country that needs attention, that needs a reorientation, and it needs new leadership at the top. Speaking of leaders, I noticed my friend Brian Jean is here. Yeah. Brian, I want to thank you very much. Brian has not only been an active and engaged citizen in both federal and provincial politics, he's been a successful businessman. He's a wonderful friend. He's helped create wealth and generate jobs, not only in Fort McMurray, but around this province and around the country. And Brian, your friendship means a great deal, and your presence here is a real honor. Thank you. I started to talk a little bit about my children. One of the discoveries that I've had in the last few years, being around my kids, is that it actually prepares me for a return to politics. A lot of unfounded allegations, and screaming and yelling, and I clean up somebody else's mess just about every day. And there is a lot to take on. But as I said, when I hearken back to our time in government, when we made the necessary adjustments, and whether they be changes to our criminal code to address serious problems of criminality, whether it was adjustments that we made to our economic future by lowering taxes, even coming out of a global recession, we handed over the keys to 24 Sussex and the Government of Canada with a balanced budget and a slight surplus. Imagine, it seems so long ago that we had a balanced budget. And you remember the promise of modest deficits in 2015 that spiraled into tens of billions of dollars? And you'll note that in the last federal campaign, there wasn't even a promise, a whisper, or a mention, other than from the Conservative Party and the Conservative leader, about ever getting back to balanced budget. Who in this room would want to leave as the inheritance to their children a great big bill, a big visa receipt that said, you owe this, and this is what your inheritance is. It's not something that's going to help you get ahead, it's something that's going to drag you down. That's frankly where we're headed in the current climate, with the current path that the government has taken us down. But you know, it's not all bad news. Because if I know anything about the people of Alberta, and in fact I think it's a Canadian characteristic, is that we're resilient. and we're resourceful, and we look for a better way. We look for improvements locally, nationally, and there's a history in this country of overcoming adversity. And in large part, it's because people that make up this country, the majority of the population, can trace their ancestry to somewhere else. And they take that experience, they take that perspective, they take that desire to build a better life, and they apply it every day. Our country has been built on immigration. And we have to stop trying to divide this country. We have to stop a squeaky door. I'm concerned about deliberate attempts to divide us, to pit region against region, people against people, party against party. You know, one of the goals, I think, of any government is to bring a sense of common purpose and unity. One of the moments that we recently commemorated was the 10-year anniversary of the golden goal that Sidney Crosby scored when Canada won the gold medal in Vancouver. And that was a unifying moment. And it's interesting these days that it seems to be sport or the achievements of the arts or an author. We celebrate those moments. We haven't had a lot to celebrate when it comes to political achievement and leadership in this country. And selfies, and dancing and dressing up, that's not enough. It has to be achievement, authenticity, action. And so I think the country's crying out for civility, for a higher discourse, a discussion that is going to actually bring the country to a better place, not for partisan reasons, but for the collective, for a higher calling, which is bringing our country into a better, more competitive, more prosperous, and ultimately a better outcome for all. And that takes tremendous work and commitment, but it takes tremendous effort by a lot of people. People that want to be part of it. They want to feel that they're actually included, that their views are respected. And I've used this euphemism as others have before, but we need a big blue tent in the Conservative Party that pushes those tent pegs out a little further and says, everybody's welcome here. Your face is reflected in the Conservative Party of Canada. Your voice respected, your views included. Then and only then do I think many Canadians will come back to support us, because they will feel that the Conservative Party takes their views to heart and reflects it in the policies that we will put out, the policies that we will present to Canadians, because it's simply not enough, and it never has been, to tear things down. This is a party that builds. This is a party that promotes and pushes upward Canadians' aspirations. And look, the Prime Minister is actually doing enough to discredit himself. We don't need, frankly, to spend much more time talking about it. What we have to say is these are the costed, sensible solutions. And when it comes to the issue of the energy sector, it can coexist with environmental protection. They can work together. What we need to see is actual effort to put these projects back on track. Imagine a country that has the largest, among the largest reserves in the world. And the United Nations has said we'll be using fossil fuels for the next 40 to 50 years. And we are net importers of oil and gas. We're bringing it into our country from places like Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, Algeria, places that we criticize for their human rights records, but we're buying their product and in some cases propping up tyrannical regimes when we have it available under our feet in Alberta with the technology and a highly regulated, highly ethical production that we could be sharing not only with the rest of Canada, where we are still burning coal in some jurisdictions and provinces like mine, but we can supply the world. We can compete with other countries, compete in other markets, reduce greenhouse gases in places that don't adhere to strict environmental protections and are burning coal. Because liquefied natural gas burns at 50% of the carbon emissions of coal. And if we go into those other marketplaces, we reap a return on that investment, that we reinvest in new green technologies, that we enhance the technologies that already are here, that we use alternative fuels and alternative sources to drive our economy even higher, and all of the jobs and productivity associated with that effort. Now we're talking. Now we're doing something. Because we're not the problem. With our massive forest and low manufacturing footprint, Canada is not the problem. But we are a recipient of the problem because we don't live in a smoke-free Tim Hortons. This is a global issue that's affecting the Canadian Arctic in a very detrimental way. Climate change is real. The causes and the solution are the more important part of the equation. And I think it will be Canadian ingenuity, technology, that will find the solutions. And I think the energy sector is going to be front and center in what those solutions are. We've got to stop vilifying people who disagree with us and simply make our case. And I think, quite frankly, Alberta would benefit from somebody from the East representing their interests in the House of Commons. And I know somebody who's prepared to do it. So, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot to talk about. There are big challenges in this big, beautiful, wonderful country of ours. But I sense a real motive and a real common cause that is Canada. And I've undertaken this out of my love for this country, quite frankly, and out of a sense of duty and obligation for public service. And I feel the energy, frankly, pardon the pun, wherever I've been, that a lot of Canadians, I think, are quite fed up, but they're also very open-minded, and they're also very willing to put their shoulder to the wheel and to help where they can, when they can, in communities large and small. And the diversity of this nation is a strength. But the real strength is the freedom and democracy that we enjoy. And I've been to many parts of the world, as have you, where that opportunity to change your government without the sound of a gun doesn't exist. And so we should cherish and relish the freedoms that we have. We should cherish every opportunity to exercise them. But it's predicated on participation. Democracy only works when people engage. And Albertans, I think, are as engaged as they've ever been, and ready to have their voices heard, as they were in the last general election, when they elected Conservative members in just about every riding in this province. Now what we need to do as a party is convince Ontario, Quebec, Atlantic Canada to do the same. We need to remind all of those regions that not only have we heard them, not only have we as a party made the necessary adjustments to meet their interests, but that we want them with us, and that we want to make the changes that will help their provinces and do the right thing for their children that we've always done as a party. Going back again to that very beginning, and going back throughout our history, whether it was introducing the first Bill of Rights, which was a Conservative government, whether it was electing the first person of color, which was a Conservative government, which was having the first female Prime Minister in Canada, a Conservative government. All of the diversity that other parties may claim, we've demonstrated our ability to do it. It's demonstrable when you actually do it and not talk about it. So less talk, more action. More ability to move those tent pegs is predicated on ensuring that people feel comfortable and confident and included. That's what I'm intending to do. And I'm also committing to this. I'm not going to attack other Conservatives. We're a united party. We have a united provincial party. There's one formula for defeat and one party governance. When the Conservative Party splinters, when we fall apart, when we fray at the edges, we elect majority Liberal governments. So please, let's pull together. Let's have the respectful dialogue. Let's have sometimes the heated and spirited discussions that we have around kitchen tables, that we have in the family, that we have in the home. But let's stay united. Let's stay together. Let's stay focused on the future. And the future and the goal is governance. Because when we're in government, when we're making proper decisions, then we propel the country forward. And I believe that we can do that. I believe it's entirely within our grasp, and it's certainly what this country needs at this moment in our history. I thank you so much for the opportunity to spend some time with you here. I hope I have a chance to meet more of you in person and to hear from you as to how we get there, how we get back to government, how we get the country and the resource sector and the market and our economy back on track and back in a place where Canadians will all truly benefit from a respectful and productive and entirely inclusive government. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Parts of Atlantic Canada. I think there's a resonance and a connection that a Conservative leader from the region would have. Same in Quebec. We need to go there and speak to the same issues that are being experienced here. The decision to not proceed with an LNG plant in Quebec is bringing about the same type of economic hardship that Albertans know all too well. So we need to have a real discussion about how we address some of the inequities in our economy. What we're seeing in the opposition to natural resource development has hurt the entire country, not just any one region. It's had an impact. When Alberta does well, Canada does well. And so, I hope to be able to speak to some of these issues in more detail as this campaign proceeds, but I'm confident we're going to do well in Atlantic Canada. I know the region well. Je parle français avec mes collègues au Québec. Je comprends bien le besoin d'une nouvelle direction pour les belles provinces. Comme ici, comme en Alberta, c'est la même chose.
Thank you, merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is once again Indranil Chaudhary along with camera person Mr. Lali. We just spoke to the Prime Ministerial candidate and prospective leader of the Conservatives, Mr. Peter Mackay. And to sum up his comments, he said, Alberta is the engine for Canada's growth. If Alberta does well, then Canada will do well as well. And the objective of Mr. Peter Mackay will be to get some more blue wave into the more immigrant places like Ontario, Quebec and Atlantic Canada, because Alberta is already blue. Thank you very much. Indranil Chaudhary signing off from Star Canada TV.
ਜ਼ਿਕਰਯੋਗ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਹੁਣ ਤੱਕ ਪੀਟਰ ਮਕੇ ਨੂੰ ਹੀ ਫਸਟ ਰਨਰ ਅਪ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ, ਪਰ ਅਜੇ ਵੀ 2 ਹਫ਼ਤਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਸਮਾਂ ਬਾਕੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ 2 ਹਫ਼ਤਿਆਂ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਹੀ ਇਹ ਸਾਰੀ ਤਸਵੀਰ ਸਾਫ਼ ਹੋਵੇਗੀ। ਬਿਊਰੋ ਰਿਪੋਰਟ, ਸਟਾਰ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ TV।